haven't watched Zoolander, watch that as well. Okay, so the first question is Mary, and she's saying, my concern is how do you monitor this for children and teenagers? So I guess strategies to enable some of these well-being
Yeah, look,
strategies when
I
it's
find it
other people
interesting that we
and
go straight
teenagers.
to children and young people because I think often it's the adults who are doing a really crap job of role modeling that. So I always start with role modeling, like what are you doing? What have you got on your phone? What are you kind of telling yourself lies about? In terms of children and young people, again, it's about, I mean, my whole work is around sharing the digital nutrition philosophy primarily with parents to help them set up healthy tech habits. So it's about talking about the quality of the content, the context that we can use it in, and really having conversations like you would say, how was soccer training? Or you did really well in netball today, and talk about their online experiences. So I guess that's a part of a bigger conversation where, yes, time and screen time has been the metric that we've been obsessed with. However, I would suggest that even if you were following the screen time guidelines of 2 hours a day, if that 2 hours was violent content, then that's horrible. Whereas my kid probably watches way more than 2 hours of TV a day, but the quality of the content I am keeping on top of, because she's not allowed to watch YouTube Kids unless I'm in the room. And she knows really clearly, and I'll share a blog that I've written about, I'm a cyber psychologist. How do I manage my kids' screen time? Some of the tips that I do. And yeah, it is really tricky because you can't necessarily be on top of it, especially if you've got a 16-year-old. It's easy if she's 6. But it's about the conversations about the principles in your home and the values that you share around where technology lives and what rights and responsibilities we have around it.
Wonderful. In your research or experience,
Mm-hmm.
is there a relationship between the increase in ADHD diagnosis and information overload?
This is a really, really good question because technically to get an ADHD diagnosis, it needs to be historical. So if you go to a reputable psychiatrist who is going to follow the correct way of diagnosing, they're going to go and you're going to be asked for your parents or somebody from your childhood to be able to identify and say, yes, these deficits of attention, and there's like 7 or whatever there are, you need 5 out of the 7, I think, off the top of my head, have been historical. So you can't, as a, I don't know, mid-30s somebody, say, oh, I suddenly can't focus, it must be ADHD. So in terms of, is technology adding to ADHD? Diagnosis formally, who knows? That's really tricky, I guess, to match up, and even to, I'm going to be careful what I say here, even to make sure that psychiatrists are diagnosing using those formal structures. I know there are some that will see for one session and say, did this happen as a child? And you say yes, and you walk out with a diagnosis and potentially medication. So really the question is whether or not formal diagnosis is important. Is it actually just dysfunctional, like it's impacting you, whether it's a formal diagnosis or not? It's impacting you, it's stopping you doing the things that you need to do, in which case you can apply the cognitive strategies that we would use as if you had ADHD, right? And this is where I'm talking about, we can apply all of those executive functioning coaching tools regardless of whether you have a formal diagnosis. It's just really, the medication conversation and diagnosis is a separate thing. I hope that makes sense. But I think all of our attention is being frayed and chopped into confetti when we're splitting it so much across all those sources of constant partial attention.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's complex, and it's energy management, and it's mental health management. It's
Yeah,
it's
and there's
it's a lot of things converging.
yeah, and the neurodivergent movement is a really powerful and affirming one, right? And that's not to detract from that. It's just that you don't become ADHD because you've used a lot of technology which has frayed your attention. Maybe
Yeah,
there's an
or
emerging
because you're too busy,
diagnosis.
you just have too much on.
Yeah.
Um,
And when I, a lot of my adult clients, the things that they tell me they're trying to do, I'm just like, is there a clone of you? Is there a parallel universe where somebody else is doing this? Do you have like a butler, an EA, all of that team that get it done? No, I just expect that of me. And again, I think some of those messages about having it all and doing it all come from social media. And women are kind of in this sandwich generation of feminism around like we can do it and we want to do it, but it just doesn't fit into 24 hours in the day.
Especially if you're a mom and you're
Yeah.
seeing photos of those Instagram moms, they're
Yeah,
just like,
it's just so
motherhood is
perfect.
bliss,
My
and you're just
house is
like,
so
screw you,
clean.
you bastards.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah. And, you know, no one wants to see the reality on Instagram. We don't go to Instagram so we can see our own messy houses. We go to like try and get the hack from the woman who's sorting her pantry into color coordinated snacks or whatever. I mean, I don't personally, but there's a market for that.
Yeah, I'll tell that to my wife. She likes color coordination. She's an anesthetist, and they all have
Oh,
to be a little bit OCD so they don't give the wrong drugs. That
yeah.
would be not
Yeah. And
good.
we need that, right? I totally champion attention to detail with anesthetists.
All right. Well, one more question, and then we're
Mhm.
going to wrap this up. And it's
Yeah.
from Wendy. How about children playing games for many hours that impact on their brain development? Is there
Yeah.
anything about the types of games as well? Because there's a lot of violent games, but then do you have a
Yeah.
game with just fluffy bears hugging each other and being empathetic or something along those lines?
Yeah, yeah. Look, again, really great question. And I find it fascinating that the conversation does always go to young people. And I guess that's because they've got these plastic brains that are being developed by all of these very different inputs. The short answer is it depends. It depends on the age, it depends on the content, and then the time that they're playing. It also, research will show that I guess the best way to play games is side by side. So when you're playing a game together, even though it's on the screen rather than a board game or something like that, that is a much more positive way of playing than playing a solo violent game on your own that maybe is an R-rated game and you're 8 years old. So context and the content, and then the cognitions of what does that young person think when they're playing a game? Do they think I need this to escape my life and my feelings, and or do they think, oh, this is a fun thing to do because I've just spent, you know, like all day playing and being outside and all of that sort of stuff. So we know that brains are going to develop based on the inputs. And so if you give particular inputs, then the brain is like a use it or lose it thing. So if you, like me, spend a lot of time swimming, you become really good as a swimmer or netball or whatever. So if you're gaming a lot, those inputs are going to be based on that. And so we want to make sure that they're inputs that are valuable and useful and then don't impact other areas of life, like your ability to go to school, your ability to get enough exercise, all of those things. So very complicated. But I do courses on young people and gaming and how to set healthy tech agreements and how to kind of work out what that healthy, digitally nutritious diet is. How to choose some really great games. So the Taming Gaming database, taminggaming.com, fantastic way to kind of diversify that digital diet and get kids off what I call the digital hot chips of Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft.
So much, and get them on board games as well.
Board games,
Board games are good.
absolutely. My 6-year-old plays Monopoly and loves like all of that, you know, like I get to take your money and all that kind of thing. There's really cool board games. There's a whole renaissance of board games out there. Even if you go to, you know, your major chains, there's walls of board games. So yeah.